And yeah, we've just first had our initial working group meeting last week, and so I'll do a quick report out about that as well. Next slide, please. So as everyone, on today's meeting probably knows, Silicon Valley faces a host of water challenges that are similar to those that are faced by most densely urban regions across the West. We have water and wastewater infrastructure that's aging, in some cases nearing the end of its useful life. Continued growth and development are adding additional strains on the water supplies of the region. And of course, climate change is adding to these burdens through sea level rise, more intense storms, and of course, more extreme drought like what we're facing right now. And the sources and sinks of the region's water, Northern California watersheds, local waterways, and the San Francisco Bay are to varying degrees degraded and vulnerable. And these challenges present real risks, but also opportunities to be rethinking the design and configuration and the operation of our water and wastewater systems for the 21st century. We are seeing many, you can stay on that last slide, Dennis, just for a second more. So we're seeing a lot of developments in Silicon Valley investing in water reuse, some of them, on site or district scale. And so through 2019 and 2020, we conducted a research project looking at opportunities for on-site water systems to contribute to water resilience in Silicon Valley. And the key conclusion of our research was that private sector investments in on-site systems do have the potential to provide great benefits, but only if they're incorporated into the long-term regional water planning and decision-making on the public sector side. So the report explores the potential benefits and potential downsides of on-site systems in Silicon Valley. And we draw on technical analyses, literature review, as well as conversations with stakeholders. So that's what I'll dive into now. Next slide, please. To better understand local perspectives on this topic, we interviewed 23 stakeholders who are working on this issue in the region. On-site systems currently play a pretty small role in Silicon Valley's water supply, and those interviewed had differing expectations about what this will look like in the future. Some think the on-site systems may play a major role in the future, while others think it will remain a relatively niche technology. But there is general agreement that the water supply portfolio for the region will expand to include a greater mix of scales. On the private sector side, those interviewed agreed that sustainability goals are a major driver for corporate investments in on-site systems, as well as long-term ROI. So on-site water systems don't always present a strong ROI in the near term, but rising water and wastewater costs indicate greater returns over time. In addition, many felt that corporate investments in on-site systems can contribute to improved water security for the region and also to innovation in the water sector. But interviewees expressed some concerns about the appropriate role of corporations in managing water resources. So this included, some trepidation about corporate accountability for public health and safety, especially over the long-term operation of these systems, as well as concerns about equity when it comes to water costs and availability. And then lastly, interviewees were asked about California Senate Bill 966, which requires the State Water Board to adopt regulations for on-site systems. And this bill enjoys wide support, and everyone agreed that standardized regulations for on-site systems are super important. But there was some disagreement about whether local permitting versus state or regional level is the appropriate approach. And because it looks like local permitting will be the route, everyone agreed that local public health officials will need training and financial resources to effectively implement the coming regulations. Next slide, please. So the next piece of the research is that we looked at the potential impacts, good and bad, of on-site water systems. If implemented widely, on-site systems have the potential to really fundamentally shift water use and wastewater production patterns in Silicon Valley, which would alter water, greenhouse gas, and other resource needs. This can provide a wide range of benefits, but could also create adverse impacts if done poorly and without integration into the broader water system. For example, it could result in stranded assets or jeopardize existing and future commitments to recycled water customers. So we ended up identifying 26 potential impacts associated with on-site systems, which you can see on this table. And these outcomes and impacts depend on local context and generally are proportional to the extent to which these on-site systems are actually scaled up. So a small number of on-site systems will probably have no or very little effect on the water and wastewater systems and broader community, but they may have some important impacts on the site itself. Widespread implementation, on the other hand, could have cascading benefits to water and wastewater systems, the communities and ecosystems, but would also potentially have greater impacts on the planning and operation of the centralized water systems. Next slide. So a third component of our research was developing a series of spatial metrics to explore opportunities for on-site reuse within Silicon Valley. Our team conducted a set of geospatial analyses in the region to evaluate opportunities for on-site systems to integrate with regional planning and contribute to regional water management strategies. So this included a number of key factors like priority development areas, the reach of existing purple pipe networks, and expected sea level rise impacts, among other factors. We found that there are some areas that are slated for significant development and redevelopment on the commercial sector that have little or no existing access to recycled water infrastructure. And those are these areas in dark blue on the map that you see on the screen. So these areas include portions of downtown San Jose, around most Caltrain stations, and some other key urban corridors within San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. Next slide. So I'll wrap up this part by just summarizing some of the key findings of this report, really realizing the benefits of on-site systems in Silicon Valley for water and wastewater systems, for the communities, and to address the real risks and reservations. It's going to require a lot of coordination between public and private sectors. And failing to incorporate the expansion and investment in on-site systems into water and wastewater master planning can lead to unnecessary infrastructure investments and ultimately higher costs for ratepayers. So integrated planning is key to advancing the benefits and managing for the trade-offs of on-site systems. And in order to achieve that level of planning and integration and coordination, groups who aren't currently really communicating with each other are going to need to start working together a lot more closely. And so this was the impetus for the working group that was launched this year, for which we just had our first meeting last week. Next slide. So this new working group has about 24 members across public, private, academic, and nonprofit sectors. And there are two main objectives of this work. The first is to foster dialogue and develop a shared understanding of the challenges and opportunities around on-site systems in Silicon Valley. And the second is to actually get help in developing what we're calling right now a decision support framework for on-site systems implementation in urban areas generally, but drawing heavily on the Silicon Valley context. And this is to support our overarching goal of helping to ensure that private investments in on-site systems are informed by local context and done in alignment with public water management goals and objectives so that they can ultimately lead to greater benefits over time and address some of these key issues like climate change. Next slide, please. So we explored a variety of themes and insights and needs around on-site reuse development during this first meeting. To get at these insights, we asked questions like, who are you and why are you here today? But also, what are some of the key challenges and opportunities that you see around on-site system investments? What would be the benefits of a more systematic and coordinated approach to these projects? And what factors should implementers be thinking about to determine if an on-site system is the right choice for a given site? What came out of this discussion is a widespread acknowledgement that on-site systems investments are growing in Silicon Valley, and that strategic coordination is going to be really important to ensure optimal outcomes for these investments and to avoid some of these outcomes that we don't want to see. And working group members indicated that there are several kind of deficiencies in the enabling environment, to put it in kind of a wonky way, that are challenging, optimal investments in these systems. And a lot of these are around regulatory and institutional factors, which in turn then influence corporate decision making, and some of the technical factors as well. The working group acknowledged that these systems are gaining momentum, and it's not anymore a question of whether they should be implemented, but how we need to prepare for a change that is coming. And so an initial understanding of those needs, what we need to do to prepare, are listed on the slide here. And after just a moment, we can go to the next slide. Great. So this first meeting was the first in a series of 4 working group meetings that we'll be having over the next 6 months, ultimately culminating in that decision support framework that I spoke about, which will be published by the Pacific Institute sometime in the spring. So keep an eye out for that. And with that, we can go to the next slide. And just to say thanks for your time. And if we have time, happy to answer any questions. And if we don't, my email is here if you're interested in learning more.